Hello everyone, I'm Vaishakhi. Today I'll be trying to enhance your knowledge about the poem Daffodils by William Wordsworth, one of the most famous romantic poets who loved nature and worshipped also nature, one who was the greatest devotee of nature. In his lifetime of 1770 to 1850, around 90 years, he composed around 397 poems, and all of them were based on nature, like Solitary Reaper, The Green Linnet, The Ode to the Skylark, Tintern Abbey. All these poems were mostly devoted to nature. In this poem, the poet is talking about daffodils. And daffodils here is actually a symbol of rebirth and regeneration, because daffodil is the first flower which is found during the springtime in the nature. So it is actually a symbol of something new, some kind of new beginning, some kind of rebirth or regeneration. The poem was written by William Wordsworth in the year 1807, but the origination of the poem was actually when the poet was traveling with his sister Dorothy in 1802 in the month of April by the side of the Glencoyne Bay in the Gilbarrow Park. And then the beautiful mesmerizing sight of the golden daffodils inspired him, and he composed the poem in 1805 once, and then again in 1807 it was published. Many other poems are also written by other different poets about the flowers, like Red Red Rose by Robert Burns and A Sunflower by William Blake, one of the other romantic poets. This poem, A Sunflower, is actually a poem where the sunflower is symbolizing a human being, one who is frustrated by the restraints of the world, and he is actually trying to reach a world where any kind of seeking, any kind of pursuit stops, because the world is perfect, because the world is full of peace and it has no connection with the anxieties of the mundane real world. Now I'm going to describe about the theme of the poem Daffodils. The poem is actually having two themes. The first one, nature is always delightful, nature is always joyful. That is the actual theme of the poem. The joie de vivre, that is the extreme amount of enjoyment by being in the close proximity of the nature. And the second theme of the poem is nature is having the healing power, the power to cure from any kind of ailments, from any kind of pain, any kind of anxieties, of any sort. The form of the poem is actually very simple. It is having 4 stanzas having 6 lines each, and the rhyming scheme of the poem is ABABCC, that is cloud, hills, crowd, daffodils, trees and breeze, that is ABABCC. The poem is actually a lyrical poem, and a lyrical poem is a kind of poem which was accompanied by lyre, a kind of musical accompaniment. That is, it is a kind of song where the poet is trying to describe, where the poet is trying to reflect upon his feelings. The poem's tone is at the same time cheerful and happy and contemplative also, that is thoughtful also. The poem is having iambic tetrameter, and the poem is having a kind of mood that is very very happy, very very delightful and very very cheerful. Now I'll proceed to explain the poem. I wandered, lonely as a cloud, that floats on high over vales and hills. Now students, keep on underlining the tough word meanings and write down their meanings also, like vales. It is a diminutive form, it is a short form of the word valleys. When all at once I saw a crowd, a host of golden daffodils. The poet is actually trying to compare himself as a cloud, because just like a cloud, he was also tension free. He was having no particular purpose or any kind of destination. He was very light spirited, and he was enjoying being in the company of his sister Dorothy and the delightful. When all at once I saw a crowd, a host of golden daffodils. The poet is trying to say that when he was moving here and there, roaming here and there, just like a cloud, he saw these golden, beautiful daffodils. And he has personified the daffodils. And that is why he has said that the daffodils were a crowd, a host, and they were extremely good looking. And students, at the same time, while explaining the poem, I will be describing the literary devices. That is simile, I wandered lonely as a cloud, as and like, anywhere you find in the sentence, it is a direct comparison, and that is simile. And the poet is here trying to compare between himself and the clouds. And the point of why he is comparing, because just like a cloud, he was also purposeless. He was having no particular destination. He was very light spirited, and he was actually very free at that moment. So that is why he is comparing himself with the cloud. The second figure of speech is fluttering and dancing in the breeze. The poet, I have already told you, personified the daffodils. He has given the daffodils a kind of human attributes, and that is why the daffodils are actually dancing. They are without any kind of hands and legs, they are dancing. And that is because the poet is actually having a personification, already personified the daffodils. Beside the lake, beneath the trees, fluttering and dancing in the breeze. So that is, the poet is saying that the location of the daffodils is by the side of the Glencoyne Bay, and beneath the big trees which were around the Glencoyne Bay. There are many big trees, and under the shadow of these big trees, the beautiful looking daffodils were twisting their heads. They were tossing their heads. They were dancing. And the figure of speech, personification, and then alliteration. Alliteration is a kind of figure of speech where the same letter word beginning with the same letter comes once, more than one time, like 2 times, twice, it can be thrice also. Here in this line, look at the children, B and B, they are repeated. Beside the lake, beneath the trees, B and B repeated, and they are same letter word beginning with the same letter. They are 2 different words. They can be in any place in the same line, but if it is happening, we'll say this is alliteration. Now in the second stanza, continuous as the stars that shine and twinkle on the Milky Way, they stretched in never-ending line along the margin of a bay. Now again a simile is being used. Continuous as, I have already mentioned, if the word as and like is there, it's a simile. Now here the poet is comparing the daffodils with the stars, because the stars are extremely good looking. The stars are many in number, they are numerous, uncountable in number. Just like that, the daffodils are also many in number, they are uncountable, you cannot count them. And they both are dazzling, they are looking extremely good looking, they are twinkling, shining, bright. On these 2 parameters of being many in number and dazzling quality, the poet is comparing the daffodils with the stars. And they have stretched in a never-ending line, the line which is having no beginning and no ending. Why the poet is saying so? Because they are many in number, and the poet couldn't find at a glance that from exactly where the daffodils have started to grow by the side of the bay until which point they have stretched. 10,000 saw I at a glance, tossing their heads in sprightly dance. Now the poet is saying he has seen 10,000 daffodils at a glance. That is, glance means just for a second. Look, just for a second, glance. He has seen 10,000 daffodils. Now students, is it possible for anyone to check and count also that how many daffodils he has seen within a single second? So that is why this is a figure of speech called hyperbole, and that is to exaggerate something, to over exaggerate something in order to praise it, in order to create a more delightful situation, and that is called hyperbole. And why is it so? Why the poet is saying? Because he was extremely mesmerized by this beautiful scenic beauty, where he was present in the nature's bounty, where there was the valley, there was the hill, there was a very good looking Glencoyne Bay and waves inside it, and just by the side there were many daffodils under the big trees. So that is why the poet is over exaggerating his feelings of being happy, of being in glee, and that is why he has said that he saw 10,000 daffodils tossing their heads in sprightly dance. The daffodils were tossing their heads in a kind of dance which was sprightly. Now the sprightly word means to be happy, and the synonymous words of being in happy will be repeated in the poem. Many words like glee, like jocund, like gay, like pleasure, all these words are synonymous, and which is connecting to the first theme of the poem, that is nature is always providing us delight and happiness. Now students, after explaining these two stanzas, I'll be asking you some question. I'll be giving you some kind of handout, like what is the location of the daffodils? First question. Second question, why is the poet comparing himself to a cloud? Third question, what is the point of comparison between the daffodils and the stars in the Milky Way? Now students, these are very small questions I have given you, and I hope you will try to write them down.